a struggling widower, with nothing left after her daughter's life-saving treatment, gave her last $50 to a poor stranger on the street. The next morning, a mysterious knock at her door revealed something that would change her life forever. Sophia Reynolds stood by the large window in her modest Chicago apartment, staring out at the bustling street below. The late afternoon sunlight cast a golden glow, but inside, her heart felt heavy. The laughter of children playing outside seemed a cruel reminder of the life her 12-year-old daughter, Emma, could no longer enjoy. Emma had always been a bright and imaginative girl, her dreams filled with plans of becoming a veterinarian. She had a natural connection with animals, and Sophia could still remember the way Emma's eyes sparkled when she talked about opening a clinic for strays. But that was before leukemia entered their lives, a silent thief that stole her energy, her laughter, and her days at school. Sophia, a single mother in her early 30s, had been fighting an uphill battle since her husband, Ethan, died in a car accident 3 years ago. Ethan had been everything to Sophia, her best friend, her partner, her biggest cheerleader. He had always encouraged her to chase her dream of becoming a writer, and Sophia had believed that together, they could overcome any challenge. But his sudden death shattered that belief. Overnight, Sophia was thrust into a life of uncertainty, juggling 2 jobs to make ends meet. By day, she worked as a receptionist at a downtown office, her smile hiding the exhaustion that threatened to consume her. By night, she worked as a freelance writer, taking on small projects to keep the bills paid and food on the table. And now, there was Emma's treatment, a towering cost of $120,000 that loomed over them like an insurmountable wall. The doctors had assured Sophia that with timely treatment, Emma had a strong chance of recovery, but the expenses were staggering. Sophia had already sold Ethan's prized possessions, including the watch he wore every day and the first gift he had ever given her, a locket with their wedding photo inside. She had even parted with her unfinished manuscripts, each page holding a piece of her heart. Yet, the money she managed to scrape together still wasn't enough. One afternoon, Sophia returned home from her receptionist job to find Emma sitting on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her frail frame. Despite her pale complexion, Emma greeted her mother with a smile. "How was work, Mom?" Emma asked, her voice soft but warm. "It was fine, sweetheart," Sophia replied, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. "How are you feeling?" "Okay," Emma said, but Sophia could see the fatigue in her daughter's eyes. "Did you know Mrs. Jensen's dog had puppies? She showed me pictures. They're so cute. If I were healthy, I'd ask if we could adopt one." Sophia's chest tightened. Emma's love for animals had never wavered, even during her illness. "When you get better," Sophia said, her voice firm with determination, "we'll get a dog. Maybe 2. Emma's face lit up at the promise, but Sophia knew the weight of the words. She had to find a way to raise the money. Time was running out. The next day, Sophia's routine took her to the hospital for Emma's scheduled checkup. After leaving Emma in the care of the nurses, she decided to take a walk to clear her head. The streets outside the hospital were busy, the noise of traffic and people filling the air. At the crosswalk, she noticed an elderly woman standing uncertainly, clutching a cane and a bag of groceries. The woman hesitated, her face lined with worry as cars zipped by. "Do you need help crossing the street?" Sophia asked, stepping forward. The woman looked up, relief washing over her face. "Oh yes, dear. Thank you. These streets are so busy these days." Sophia took the woman's arm gently and waited for the light to change. As they crossed, she couldn't help but think of how her mother had always taught her to help others, no matter how hard her own life was. "There you go," Sophia said with a smile when they reached the other side. "You're a kind soul," the woman said. "Bless you." Sophia smiled faintly and turned back toward the hospital. She didn't notice the man who had been watching her from across the street. Nathan Scott, standing tall in his tailored suit, had recognized her immediately. He hadn't seen Sophia since high school, but there she was, her kind, determined spirit shining through even in such a small act of kindness. Nathan's heart stirred as old memories rushed back. He had adored Sophia back then, though she had kept her distance, her aloof demeanor guarding her from anyone who tried to get close. Nathan adjusted his tie, his mind made up. He needed to know why Sophia was at the hospital. More importantly, he needed to know how he could help her. That evening, Sophia sat at her desk in the corner of their tiny living room, typing away at her laptop. She had no choice but to take on more work, no matter how exhausted she felt. Her fingers trembled as she typed, her mind swirling with thoughts of Emma and the mounting bills. A message notification pinged on her phone, interrupting her train of thought. It was from an unknown number. Sophia opened the message and froze. It read, "Hi, Sophia. It's Nathan Scott. I think I can help you and your daughter. Can we meet?" Her mind raced. Nathan Scott? She hadn't heard that name in years. What did he mean by help? As she stared at the message, her heart pounded with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Who was Nathan now, and why was he reaching out after all this time? Sophia's gaze shifted to Emma, who had fallen asleep on the couch, her face peaceful despite her frailty. She didn't have the luxury of ignoring a potential opportunity. Taking a deep breath, she typed back, "When and where?" The morning sunlight streamed through the hospital's windows as Sophia sat beside Emma, who was hooked up to N4. Emma was unusually cheerful, despite her fragile condition. Her imagination seemed to transport her beyond the hospital walls. "Mom," Emma said, her voice soft but lively, "do you think I could work at a wildlife sanctuary one day? You know, like those people who rescue lions and elephants." Sophia smiled warmly, brushing a hand over Emma's hair. "Of course, sweetheart. Once you're better, you can do anything you set your heart on." Emma nodded, her eyelids growing heavy as the fatigue set in again. Sophia stayed by her side, but her thoughts drifted to the message she had received the previous evening. Nathan Scott. His name still rang familiar, though distant. She recalled the boy from high school with fiery determination and an easy smile, who had once tried to befriend her. Sophia had been too guarded then, too focused on her mother's warnings about boys, to give Nathan a chance. She had never imagined he would reappear in her life. Later that afternoon, Sophia stood at the park's entrance. She had hesitated to come, unsure if meeting Nathan was the right choice. But desperation outweighed caution. She couldn't let her pride stand in the way of anything that might help Emma. As she scanned the area, she spotted Nathan near a fountain. He looked older but unmistakably familiar. His red hair, now neatly combed, shone in the sunlight, and his confident posture hinted at a life well lived. When their eyes met, he smiled and walked toward her. "Sophia," he said warmly, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." "It has," she replied, shaking his hand. "I was surprised to hear from you." "I saw you yesterday," Nathan admitted, his tone casual but sincere. "At the hospital. I asked around and learned about Emma. I'm so sorry for what you're going through." Sophia stiffened slightly, unsure how to respond. "It's been difficult," she said carefully, "but we're managing." Nathan nodded, his expression softening. "You shouldn't have to manage alone. I want to help." Sophia's brow furrowed. "Why? We haven't spoken in years." Nathan hesitated for a moment, then said, "Because I remember the girl who stood up for others, even when no one else did. You've always had a good heart, Sophia. When I saw you helping that woman yesterday, I realized that hasn't changed." His words caught her off guard. "That's kind of you to say," she replied cautiously. "But Emma's treatment is expensive. I can't expect anyone to step in." Nathan's eyes met hers. "I know, and I'm not just anyone. I've been fortunate in my career, and I want to use what I have to make a difference. If you'll let me, I'd like to help cover Emma's medical expenses." Sophia blinked, taken aback by his offer. "Nathan, it's an enormous amount of money." He nodded. "I understand, but I've already spoken to a few people. I can make it happen." For a moment, Sophia felt hope stirring in her chest, but doubt quickly followed. "Why would you do this for me? For us?" Nathan's expression grew serious. "Because I couldn't help you back then, but I can now. Please let me do this." Sophia's eyes welled up. She had always been fiercely independent, but this was about Emma. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Nathan replied gently. Let me help. After a long pause, Sophia nodded. Okay. Thank you, Nathan. This means everything. Over the next week, true to his word, Nathan took action. Sophia was astonished when she received a call from the hospital, confirming that the initial payment for Emma's treatment had been made. The weight that had pressed on her for so long began to lift, though disbelief lingered. That evening, Sophia invited Nathan to join her at a small cafe. She wanted to thank him properly. As they sipped coffee, she found herself relaxing for the first time in years. So, what do you do now? She asked, genuinely curious. I run an art company, Nathan replied. It started small, but we've grown a lot over the years. Sophia nodded, impressed. That's incredible. You always had big dreams. Nathan chuckled. And you always had talent. Do you still write? Sophia hesitated. Not much. Life got in the way. Nathan leaned forward. You should. Your words could inspire so many people. Sophia's heart ached at his encouragement. She had forgotten what it felt like to be supported, to be seen for more than her struggles. As the night deepened, Nathan walked Sophia back to her apartment. Before they parted, he said, I hope you know this isn't just about the past. I believe in what you're fighting for. You're not alone anymore. Sophia watched him walk away, his words echoing in her mind. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. The day of Emma's first treatment dawned cold and gray. Sophia sat in the hospital's waiting room, her hands clenched tightly around a styrofoam cup of coffee. The antiseptic smell of the hospital felt suffocating, but the thought of progress kept her rooted in place. Nathan had made the initial payment, and Emma was finally receiving the care she desperately needed. Mrs. Reynolds? A nurse approached, her smile kind and reassuring. Emma is responding well. She'll need to rest for a while, but you can see her soon. Sophia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. She felt a wave of relief but reminded herself that this was just the first step. There was still a long road ahead. Later that afternoon, Sophia sat by Emma's bedside. The girl was pale and drowsy but managed a faint smile when she saw her mother. Hi, Mom, she murmured weakly. Hey, sweetheart, Sophia said, brushing Emma's hair back gently. You were so brave today. Emma's eyes fluttered open a little wider. Does this mean I'll get better? Sophia forced a confident smile, though her heart ached with uncertainty. Yes, honey. One day at a time. Emma nodded, her eyelids growing heavy again. Sophia stayed by her side, holding her hand until she fell asleep. As much as she wanted to believe her own words, the nagging worry about the remaining costs gnawed at her. That evening, Sophia received a call from Nathan. His voice on the other end was warm and steady, a stark contrast to the chaos of her thoughts. How's Emma? He asked. She's resting, Sophia replied. The doctors said the treatment went well. Thank you, Nathan. I don't know how I can ever repay you. You don't need to, Nathan said firmly. But if you want to repay me, promise me one thing. Don't give up on your writing. Sophia hesitated. Nathan, that part of my life feels so far away. I barely have time to breathe, let alone write. Maybe it's exactly what you need, he said. A way to process everything, to find some balance. His words stayed with her long after the call ended. Sophia had spent so many years focused solely on survival that she had forgotten what it felt like to dream. Could she really find a part of herself again? The following week, Nathan invited Sophia to his art studio. The invitation felt like a welcome escape from the hospital and her endless responsibilities. When she arrived, she was struck by the vibrancy of the space. The walls were lined with breathtaking paintings, each one brimming with emotion and life. This is incredible, she said, turning to Nathan. Thank you, he said with a modest smile. Art saved me, you know. When things were tough, it gave me purpose. That's why I believe so strongly in your writing. I know what it can do. Sophia looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his words. I didn't know things were hard for you. They were, Nathan admitted. I grew up in a small town with few opportunities. I limped my way through life, literally and figuratively, until I realized my art could be my voice. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. His story resonated deeply with Sophia. For the first time, she felt a flicker of courage to explore the possibilities beyond her current struggles. As they stood in the studio, Nathan handed her a small notebook. "For your thoughts," he said. "Sometimes it helps to just start writing. No pressure, no expectations." Sophia accepted it, her fingers tracing the edges of the cover. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan smiled. "You don't have to do this alone, Sophia. You've been carrying the world on your shoulders. But it's okay to let someone help." For the first time in years, Sophia allowed herself to feel the weight of her emotions. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, a sense of hope slowly taking root in her heart. Weeks passed, and Emma's treatments continued. Each session drained her energy, but Sophia noticed small improvements. The color returning to her cheeks, the hint of strength in her voice. The doctors were optimistic, and so was Emma. She had started to talk about her future again, the sanctuary for animals she dreamed of running one day. One morning, as Sophia sipped her coffee at the hospital, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Nathan. "I have something to show you. Can you meet me at the studio after Emma's session today?" Sophia hesitated. Between hospital visits and her jobs, she rarely allowed herself time for anything else. But Nathan had been there for her every step of the way, and she was curious about what he wanted to share. That evening, Sophia stepped into Nathan's studio and was greeted by the familiar smell of paint and canvas. Nathan was waiting, a warm smile spreading across his face as she entered. "Perfect timing," he said, leading her to a section of the studio that had been curtained off. "I've been working on something for a while, and I think it's time you saw it." He pulled back the curtain, and Sophia's breath caught. Before her stood a series of paintings depicting scenes from her life. Her comforting Emma in the hospital, working late at her desk, and even the moment she had helped the elderly woman cross the street. Each piece radiated emotion, capturing her resilience and strength. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is incredible. I wanted to show you the way I see you," Nathan said softly. "You've been through so much, but you've never stopped fighting. These paintings are my tribute to your strength and love." Sophia turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say. No one's ever done anything like this for me." "You don't have to say anything," Nathan replied. "Just promise me one thing. Don't stop believing in yourself." Over the next few days, Sophia found herself returning to the small notebook Nathan had given her. At first, she scribbled scattered thoughts, memories of Ethan, moments with Emma, and her gratitude for Nathan's unwavering support. But soon, those scattered thoughts began to take shape, forming stories that poured from her heart onto the pages. Writing became her refuge, a way to process the whirlwind of emotions she had buried for so long. One evening, as Sophia sat at her desk, Emma shuffled into the room, her blanket draped around her shoulders. "What are you doing, Mom?" she asked, her voice groggy but curious. "Just writing a little," Sophia replied, closing the notebook quickly. "Can I see?" Emma asked, climbing onto the chair beside her. Sophia hesitated but eventually handed Emma the notebook. As her daughter flipped through the pages, a smile spread across her face. "This is so good, Mom. You should write a book." Sophia chuckled. "One thing at a time, sweetheart." The turning point came when Nathan invited Sophia to an art exhibition. To her surprise, it wasn't just any exhibition. It was his, and the centerpiece was the series of paintings he had created about her life. As she walked through the gallery, surrounded by people admiring the artwork, Sophia felt a mix of pride and vulnerability. Toward the end of the evening, Nathan approached her. "Your story inspired me," he said, "but I think it's time you shared it in your own words. You've started writing again, haven't you?" Sophia nodded, her cheeks flushing. "I have, but I'm not sure it's ready for anyone to see." Nathan smiled. "Trust yourself. The world needs your story." A month later, the doctors declared that Emma's leukemia was in remission. Sophia wept tears of joy as she hugged her daughter tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude. For the first time in years, the future felt bright. That weekend, Sophia, Emma, and Nathan drove to Lake Michigan for a day by the water. As they walked along the beach, Emma laughed and ran ahead, her energy returning with every step. Nathan and Sophia followed, their hands brushing as they walked. "You've given us so much," Sophia said, looking at Nathan. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You already have," Nathan replied. "You reminded me of what really matters. Connection, kindness, and love." As the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sophia felt a profound sense of peace. This was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild her life not just for Emma but for herself. She had found hope, love, and purpose again, and for the first time in a long while, she believed in happy endings.